everybody, welcome back to the Evermore YouTube channel. It's Chris back with another Rumour Has It video. We're talking about players linked to the club in the summer transfer window. As I always say, the season is barely finished, but Newcastle have already been linked to loads of players in the press, and we're going to cover as many as we can and talk about the links and talk about how we think those players will improve the squad. So we're going to get stuck into a couple of midfield options here, which is no doubt an area where Newcastle United are probably going to improve, I think, this summer. Our midfield's been sensational last season, there's no doubt about that. Certainly real transitional seasons for the likes of Joe Willock and Sean Longstaff. But I think going into a campaign with Champions League football on top of the normal domestic matches, I think we're definitely going to have some more quality and more depth in that midfield, because when those guys get injured, as we saw, when they get fatigued, when they get suspended like Bruno, we haven't really got much cover coming through, to be brutally honest with you. So we're going to get stuck into a couple of players here. Just before we do, a little reminder, if you're new to the channel, just check us out for the first time. Click subscribe below to come and join us. We're over 3,700 subs. Loads of room for you guys. We've got loads of content over the close season. So even though there's no football, there's still plenty ever more to get stuck into with player transfer stats and chats just like you're about to watch. Click that button, come and join us, guys. So who are the two players I'm talking about? Well, this really comes off the back of some of the news stories that are doing the rounds about the transfer budget. Now, whether you believe the transfer budget or not, it seems to be a lot of the pressure a little bit like this, with a finger in the air, really. And it seems to be the same as it was last transfer window, where journalists said we'd spend X and we spent Y. But FFP is definitely something that the club are trying to adhere to. Jamie Rubin did a podcast recently where he said exactly that we have to adhere to FFP. I think the microscope is under us even more so. And I think with all the players going to the Saudi League now, and even more spotlight on Saudi Arabia and the wealth that's in there, I think the football and government will be looking even more at Newcastle United. So that'll probably have more of a negative effect, I think, in terms of what we can spend in the transfer window, because they'll be looking at us even more. So the two players we're talking about is off the back of the story that the budget is going to be closer to 70, 80 million quid's worth of spend in the transfer window. That's providing we don't sell a player. I think we will sell a player, and I think there's a big player in particular that we probably are going to sell. He did an Instagram post recently where a lot of people asked, is he staying, is he going? I think he's definitely a sellable asset, and I think he could be the one that makes room for possibly one of these players that we're talking about right now. So the very first player we're going to talk about that this 75, 80 million quid budget could possibly be spent on is this lad right here. No surprise, he's been linked to the club perpetually ever since we got taken over, I think. But certainly last summer transfer window really looked like it was going to happen. James Maddison of now relegated Leicester City, who will be playing championship football next season. A fantastic footballer, no doubt about that. 26 years old, in the peak of his career, coming at the peak of his career. England international. We all know what Maddison's like. He's a baller. He's brilliant on the ball. He's got great close control, good touch, great delivery from set pieces. Brilliant from free kicks. Is goals and assists. You can see there, 10 goals, 9 assists in a relegated side is utterly phenomenal, really. Almiron, rivals him in the goals, but this is Almiron's best ever season that he's had in his career, 29 years of age. I'm not sure Miggy will have as good of a season next season, whereas I think Maddison could have a consistently better season when he's surrounded by better players. You can imagine what this guy would be like, threading passes through the likes of Alexander Isak and Callum Wilson. Would just be utterly phenomenal. At Leicester, in all fairness, Jamie Vardy's legs had gone. He was in, he was out. The other strikers weren't quite filling in and doing the job. And Iachos and Patterson Dackers and all these kind of guys, they just weren't doing the job for Leicester, hence why they're relegated. So the fact that he's got 9 assists and 10 goals in that team is incredible, really. But just kind of looking at his 90-minute stats per Miggy's there, you can see kind of goals to games. He's Maddison's slightly behind Miggy, but as I said, he had a phenomenal season last season. I'm not sure he will replicate that next season. Not to be negative, I just think that's pretty realistic. I think we have to expect that, really. In terms of the shots per game and the XG, you can see Maddison's quite high there, over 3 shots a game with a 0.32 XG. Shots on target is 0.98, so his goals to shot ratio is 0.11. Assists is 0.33, so he's ahead of Miggy in that regard. Pass completion at 73%. Again, as I said, a lot of the players, weren't quite picking up his passes, weren't making the runs to get there, so maybe that is a little bit down because of that. His shot creation chances is up to 5. Then his goal creation chances is the same as Miggy, 0.47. But if you dive into the kind of individual stats of where Maddison shines, if you need me to tell you, which you probably don't, because you've seen James Maddison be consistently one of the best performers in the Premier League for quite some time now there, and you can see his real strength is is obviously getting on the ball, shooting, providing assists, those through balls, those progressive passes and key passes, even in a poor side. You can see they're all green there. He wins a lot of free kicks. He gets fouled a lot, very much like Grealish did for Aston Villa and does for Manchester City. Maddison's able to do that as well. He's very seldomly dispossessed, takes a lot of touches. If you're looking at his weaker areas, I suppose, his box crosses aren't particularly great. So I don't think he's a wide player. Even though he can play wide, he's not very good in the air, but that's not really Maddison's game in all fairness. I think, as the story goes in the Daily Mail, Newcastle see Maddison as kind of that number 8 type player who can play on the right-hand side of a midfield 3 with Bruno Guimaraes, maybe Joe Linton, possibly a new number 6, which will be the next episode of the midfielders that we'll cover as well, because there's a couple of big names linked in there that can play that 6th role. But yeah, so for Maddison, for me, I think it's a no-brainer to sign. And the big stumbling block here, really, and it was the same as it was last summer, is Leicester City digging their heels in and wanting £60 million for James Maddison. He's the last year of his contract. We bid it, I think, 40 to 45 million last summer. I think that was a fair fee then. And I think that's probably similar to what Newcastle bid now. I think they'll bid 40 million quid. But Leicester seem to be hanging out for 60 million. But it's like anything with a relegated team, you've got to really take what you can get. Southampton have put a 52 million quid price tag on James Ward-Prowse. No chance of getting that whatsoever. Maddison, you may get 40, 45, you're never getting 60, but no chance of getting 52 for James Ward-Prowse. But there is another team in for Maddison, and it's Spurs. And apparently Spurs have already opened talks with Maddison. So it seems to be a bit of a straight-out battle between us and Spurs. But Spurs are kind of really struggling at the minute. I think the appeal to get a player there, there's no European football there. There's question marks over Harry Kane. They've just appointed the former Celtic manager, it's Ange Postecoglou, I think it is. Trying to get his name right there. I just call him Ange because my dad calls him Ange. So he's a very good manager, but Spurs fans have already kicked off, saying they don't want him and he's not good enough and this and that. Does James Maddison really want to walk into that, as opposed to walking into a newly qualified Champions League side with all that excitement, all that buzz, war flags, everything else going with it, England colleagues there? I think if it's a straight out choice between the two clubs, take my black and white blinkers off. If I'm Maddison, I'm walking to St James's Park. But this will be a real measure to really see what Maddison's all about, if he wants to come and be part of this project or not, if he wants to go to the bright lights big city at Spurs and maybe try and be the man if Harry Kane moves on, possibly. But I think we'll find out soon enough, because I think Leicester need that money in to rebuild that squad in the summer, and Maddison is probably their most sellable asset, along with Harvey Barnes. So I think we will see Maddison making that decision relatively soon, I think, and hopefully it will be to Newcastle United in a black and white shirt. And I think it really improves the squad. Let us know what you guys think in the comments below. We always like to hear from you if you think Maddison does improve this squad, but hopefully this is one that is going to go through. There is other midfielders on the list as well. Couple of midfielders who aren't on the list. I think Harvey Barnes is not on the list, actually, sticking with Leicester. Looking at this article here, where I think they see Harvey Barnes in a similar position to Anthony Gordon. I don't think they believe that they need that player, because they believe Gordon will come good. We're seeing flashes of Gordon, no pun intended. I think a pre-season under Eddie Howe, he's obviously going away with England for a national tournament as well this summer as well. So hopefully he'll come back pre-season fit and ready to go, and we'll see the best of Anthony Gordon. I think him and Barnes do play that similar position, so I don't think we'll see Barnes arriving at Newcastle United. But there could very well be a couple of other players under the radar that are there as well that we're looking at, and looking at the article. I don't know whether it would be instead of Maddison or as well as Maddison, but there is another player linked, and it's another former England international, which is this player here. I say former, he is still England international, but he doesn't get in the squad, does he? So it's Conor Gallagher, and I really like Conor Gallagher as a player. I think the good thing about Conor Gallagher, he's definitely an Eddie Howe type of player. There's no question about that. He's got energy, the legs on him. He's up and down like a fireman on a pole. He's definitely the kind of player you could see Eddie Howe making a better player. We've seen fantastic performances from Gallagher, briefly in West Brom when he was on loan there. Then definitely at Palace, he was absolutely superb. But we've got him compared next to Sean there on the radar grid, and you can see there's not really a. I say he does, encapsulate Sean, or He is better than Sean in some areas, but Sean's had an unbelievable season. He's only a couple of years older than Gallagher, and I think Sean goes up another level next season under Eddie Howe. I really do. We've seen some real quality from Sean this season. You see the goals. I mean, Gallagher's always good for a goal, I felt, when he was at Crystal Palace, but Sean's right up there with him. In terms of assists, Sean beats him on assists, and you want more from Gallagher than what you saw this season, but I do think he's capable of more. At 23 years old, he still has a lot to do to improve. A bit like Joe Willock as well, I think, to be fair, with Gallagher. He had more high-profile loans, I suppose, than maybe Willock had. I know he came to us and he scored 8 goals in 8 or whatever it was, but people didn't think Willock was going to be the type of player that Gallagher was going to be. So more spotlight on Gallagher for whatever reason that may be. But looking at his stats per 90, you can see that he's played 45 times for Chelsea this season or last season. Gone there, so that's a lot of football, but not a massive return from the player. You'd expect a lot better. But in terms of some of his key stats, you can see there his pass completion is still up in the 80 percentile. He's doing nearly 6 progressive passes a game, so he's ahead of Sean in that regard. He's doing 1.2 key passes. He's taking 1.7 shots. He's getting 0.66 of those on target. So, like I say, you would expect a little bit better from him. But in terms of his individual stats, you can see that there's definitely areas in here that appeal for Gallagher signing for Newcastle. Now, as I said, I don't know whether it would be instead of Maddison or as well as Maddison, but the kind of fee that Chelsea are talking about is ridiculous. They want 50 million quid for this player that looks like he's surplus to requirements, but Mason Mount also looks like he's surplus to requirements. So maybe Pochettino wants to keep one of them, and he maybe fancies Gallagher more than he fancies Mount. But there's no way someone's going to pay 50 million quid for Conor Gallagher after the season he's just had. He's had a horrendous season in terms of his expectation, his quality that we saw in that Crystal Palace loan spell. I think Newcastle value him at half that figure, about 25 million. If you think about what we paid for Joe Willock, it's probably about right. But I think Chelsea will probably dig their heels in there, but they will have to start getting some money back in, or FFP will catch up on them. But looking at Gallagher's kind of individual stats, you can see it's all in the attacking threat, where he has the greens really with his shots and his shots on target. In terms of his passes into the area, and his progressive passes are good. His key passes are good. His final third passes aren't particularly great, as are his through balls. His long pass completion isn't particularly good, or his medium pass completion is very good. But as I said, Chelsea were so disjointed this season gone. It's hard to really take these stats in a pure microcosm, really, because I know that Gallagher's a much better player than that, as a lot of the Chelsea players are. They just didn't show it. Maybe next season under Pochettino they might show it. I think it's a lot bigger of an uphill task than people may think it is with Pochettino in charge. It isn't just going to be an easy fix, that. And it'd be interesting to see if Gallagher is going to be part of that pitch or not, or whether he will be sold. But in terms of those two players, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. If it is going to be one or the other, who would you rather have? Me personally, Maddison, I think, is a better fit. The next episode we're going to be looking more at that number 6 position, because there's a couple of players on this list as well that have been mentioned in terms of on the Newcastle hit list of midfielders, but there's definitely going to be some midfield action, I think, going on this summer, and we're going to do our best to try and cover it as much as we possibly can. So as I mentioned at the start, if you just checked us out for the first time you're seeing us talk about transfer chats and stats, smash that button, come and subscribe. If you like the video as well, really appreciate it. Gets it on YouTube, helps the channel grow, can help us get to 4K subscribers. We're nearly there. We're in the high 3.7, so we're very close to 4K. Give us a click and help us get there. And if you want to hit the notification bell, you won't miss any videos coming with Evermore in the next few weeks before the football season returns. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll catch you later. Cheers.